how can telcos collaborate and use the open source communities to accelerate the pace of innovation within the industry? After all, no one telco can do everything themselves. Axel, this is one of the issues we're faced with, is this pace of innovation and the need to collaborate and skills and a skill shortage. What's Deutsche Telekom's strategy for embracing open source communities?
Indeed, the situation we're in is not very comfortable. So even without new technologies being rolled out, traffic is growing exponentially and we don't see an end to that traffic growth. Now, in the past, Moore's Law had helped us actually to master that challenge, because with the densification of hardware and hardware becoming cheaper, we could keep our production cost under control. But now, Moore's Law is flattening out, and we have to look at alternatives as well, how we can keep our production cost under control. So, at the same time, we're seeing new technologies coming out, 5G, just to mention that as a major challenge. So we see open networking as really key to master that challenge, because with the move towards disaggregation, so moving away from the black box of the past, delivered as one combination of hardware and software, to kind of the best of breed approach with open interfaces playing a key role. We see that as one of the opportunities actually for the industry. And looking at the Open Networking Summit here in Europe, I think there is significant interest in the community from the telcos, but also from the vendors to actually follow that path.
Is open networking applicable across the telecoms network or all through the stack, or are there some areas where it's a more obvious fit?
Well, there are some areas where it might be more difficult, looking at the radio, with the standards which are still, I would say, describing a closed world, but we're seeing through initiatives we're driving previously in XRAN or in ORAN, how even that is opening up. And I think open networking by the end will be applicable to most areas of the telcos. Sure, in some areas, like core routing, that might come a little bit later. But that's the nature of technology innovation.
Now, there's a lot of different open source projects out there. There's a lot of attention for resources and coders and contributions. Is the breadth of the open source community one of the challenges that a telco such as Deutsche Telekom has to deal with? Indeed,
it is. With the number of organizations being active in there, there's a certain risk for overlap and duplication of efforts. Unfortunately, we have only very limited number of resources, of skilled resources on the telco side to invest in this space. So for us, it's really important to also trigger collaboration, not only between the telcos and vendors or startups or internet companies, but also collaboration between the various open source organizations. So that is a very interesting challenge, because obviously it's the nature of an organization. You want to take a stand and grab some land, but that's not necessarily in the interest of the telcos.
Exactly. Is open telco networking inevitable? I mean, we need distributions from vendors. The vendor support is still essential, but where does that leave the traditional proprietary solutions? Is that history?
Well, having worked for one of the vendors of proprietary solutions before I joined DT 7 years ago, I think there is still space, because first of all, not all telcos are moving at the same pace towards open networking, and even the big telcos have a problem to operationalize open networking right away. So in some areas this is stimulating the innovation as well on the vendor side, and you could actually see that also the established suppliers are following the concept of disaggregation. All of a sudden they are allowing their operating system to be used on other vendors' hardware, and you see the vendor landscape is opening up as well.
So for an open telco or open service provider, it's more about utilizing open source communities, isn't it? Is there just as much emphasis on an open mindset, an open mentality, and a fresh approach to business?
Yeah, this kind of development towards an open telco, that I think is the biggest challenge for the industry, because any transformation, and especially one touching the process landscape with a move from waterfall processes towards agile work, with completely different failure culture as well, that is difficult. But we at DT are on a very good path here, and there actually it's driven top down. When Tim Höttges took over as CEO back in 2014, he was pushing for that new culture within DT, and indeed it's working out.
You're also chairman of the Telecom Infra Project, TIP. The annual summit is coming up very soon in the UK. What do you hope that TIP will give to the telecoms community? What is in effect the essence of TIP, and what can we look forward to the work coming out of TIP?
Indeed, our annual gathering of the community takes place on October 16th and 17th in London. So for the first time it's in Europe. That's a nice proof that we have a lot of European operators active actually in TIP. And the big news you're going to see at TIP Summit is actually that technology is now becoming deployable. Technology which is developed out of TIP is now entering the procurement phase at a couple of operators, and that's very big news. And obviously we have some new areas we are touching at TIP Summit as well, but I cannot disclose them today, unfortunately. You have to be there.
Rest assured we will be there, and Axel, we will talk to you during the TIP Summit itself. But for now, thanks for talking with Telecom TV.
It's a pleasure.